Hello and welcome to another great episode of Your State with me, State Representative Christopher Davis. Glad to have you here with us today. Of course, as you know, I represent the towns of East Windsor and Ellington. We're trying to get as much information as we possibly can out about the bipartisan bill that we passed last year in the jobs session, the Small Business Express package, as well as some of the opportunities for other startup businesses and larger businesses here in the state. So today I'll have joining me Commissioner Catherine Smith from the Department of Economic and Community Development to explain some of the opportunities that are available to businesses here in the state so that we can start retaining and growing business here in the state and have more jobs for all of us. Thank you, Commissioner Smith, for joining me here today.
My pleasure.
I wanted to discuss, just what the general mission of the Department of Economic and Community Development is here in the state of Connecticut.
It's actually a pretty broad mission, and I think it really speaks to the fact that driving economic growth and really getting the economy back on its feet is going to take more than just, for example, working on job creation. So our mission includes everything from that, let's really focus on putting together the right financial incentives and the right ecosystem, if you will, to drive business growth. But it also includes things like housing and making sure the housing stock here in the state is manageable for the workforce that we have in the state. It includes arts and culture, recognizing that communities in which people live are going to help us retain and grow the talent we have in the state, which is equally important. We also have tourism, and tourism is the #5 driver of our economy here in the state, so having that embedded in the Department of Economic and Community Development makes a lot of sense. And then finally, I think, and importantly, we're also right now establishing a new brand for the state and really trying to make sure that Connecticut, which has spent no money on branding for several years now, really does go back and create a much better understanding both within the state of the great things we have here to offer, but also in our surrounding states and even to the national scene as well.
Now, what are some of the activities that we're doing as a state to better brand ourselves outside, not only around the country, but around the world, about how great Connecticut is?
So, the branding program is under development as we speak. We did start last summer with a smaller branding program that was really geared towards specifically tourism. But what we're doing right now is we're creating a new brand for the state, and so we're doing it the good old-fashioned way. We're actually going to study, get some input from research on what are the strengths we should be building on, what are the perceptions of the state, and whether they fit our reality or not. How do our local citizens feel about the state? In my experience in the private sector, your best brand ambassadors are your constituents, your own citizens, or your employees in the case of a private sector company. So we really want to do those pieces right to start with. But we hope to be able to tell the story of Connecticut in a much better way, and then take that story, again, regionally first. First to our own citizens, then regionally, and then nationally as well. And many of us turn on the TV in the morning. We do see advertisements from Michigan.
Yes.
We see them from Massachusetts and other places. So we want to be in that mix. But as part of our research, we'll be quite careful about making sure we're making those investments for television ads or social media or even internet type advertising in the places that we think we're really going to be able to attract the kind of person that really will be a Connecticut viable resident or starting their business here or even just coming to visit.
Now, is it something that we're going to see kind of public and private partnerships involved in this branding campaign, or is it something solely kind of launched by DECD?
In the past, we've done a lot with private sector. In fact, last year, you may recall, the state really didn't have anything in the budget. So we found a little bit scraping together a few extra monies in certain accounts, and the private sector more than matched that to make sure that we actually had some money to budget for next year, or for last summer. This branding campaign, which was allocated at $15 million for this fiscal year and for next fiscal year, those will be state dollars only that will be going into it. But we are very hopeful that the private sector, who's been engaged from day one in this branding initiative, will also put their money in. And I have every reason to believe, based on all their feedback during this process, that they will, in fact.
Excellent. Now, how does DECD accomplish the other parts of the mission, the business growth, the housing, the other parts of the cultural side of things as well? What are some of the activities that DECD does to accomplish their mission? Well,
I might just turn the clock back a minute to answer that question. I came on board in April of 2011. And one of the first things that I wanted to do was really get the state of the state, if you will. So I went out on a large listening tour, and the governor and I together, I started, and then he thought it was a good idea, and he came along. We had a lot of tours stops. We stopped in I think it was over 55 locations. We met with probably 400 companies and citizens and not-for-profits, by the way, and local economic development community people and mayors and all sorts of folks. And we essentially asked 3 questions. You know, what is going well? What isn't going well? And then what would you do if you were sitting in our position, first, second, and third, to try to help promote economic activity within the state? And we got a lot of very good feedback, and it really helped us to shape what eventually became the special session jobs bill. And we can come back and spend some time on that.
Sure.
But there was certainly a lot of commonality in what we heard. We heard, I love Connecticut because we have great, great talent here, and it's very important that we continue to have that talent. And oh, by the way, my workforce is aging. I have a lot of people. In some cases, people had 50% of their population that was eligible for retirement within the next 5 to 7 years. So people are worried about who's going to replace that great part of their workforce. We heard, you know, we could do a bit better on regulatory environment here. It's sometimes burdensome and unpredictable how long it's going to take to get that permit, to understand how this rule or reg works. And oh, by the way, stop changing things all the time. It's really hard for us to keep up when you change things. Make it predictable and stable.
I've heard that many times myself.
Yeah, I'm sure
as well.
you have, right? I mean, and I understand that. Having been in business myself, it's really hard if the rules are changing around you all the time, particularly when you're competing with companies that work in other states.
Certainly.
And so that's all part of what we wanted to get at. The workforce itself, you know, we really wanted to make sure we are working hand in hand with the education side of the house in the state to make sure that starting at K through 12, right up through our higher education UConn graduate schools, that we are in fact educating our youth for the future and where do we think those jobs are going to be available. So while that isn't managed in my department, it's really managed with the education system and the Department of Labor. We're going to try to influence that as we put our job strategy together. And then finally, you know, we heard from, there's a lot of small businesses and of course many large businesses in the state that really want more interaction globally as well. So what can we do to promote more foreign direct investment as well as improve and stimulate some of the export activity? So, you know, during the course of the summer, we got a lot of input. We did go through the special session, and I think we achieved a lot of putting the meat on the bones on our strategy. And now it's about execution. So I've been spending a lot of time on the road in what we're calling our Reinventing Connecticut's road show, where we've been out to, I think, about 20 different locations so far. It might even be up to 25 by now, to talk directly to small business owners, particularly, about some of the features of the bill and that will really help them. You know, there's been just great amount of work that that's been done to now provide the tools so that we can in fact help our local businesses grow here in the state.
Now, I've been on many business tours as well in my own district
good.
and around the state, and hearing from business owners. And one thing that we hear is that they hear a lot about the Small Business Express package and the jobs bill that was supported by both sides of the aisle overwhelmingly, which is a great sign of what we can do here in the state of Connecticut. I was just wondering if you could expand upon exactly DECD's role in that jobs bill and what was passed and how small businesses can interact with your department and get the things that they need to move forward.
Great. Well, the jobs bill, as you mentioned, you know, created something called the Small Business Express package. There's a program called Step Up, which is a training program. There's numerous things inside the jobs bill, from stimulus type dollars through these economic development programs. DECD, the Department of Economic and Community Development, is really responsible for making sure those programs are implemented effectively. I will say the Step Up program is managed by Labor, so I don't want to confuse everybody. But that program, the Express package in particular, is really geared towards your small business owner who's on the verge of wanting to hire that next person, buy that next piece of equipment, and really make that next investment in his or her business. And so DECD can provide small businesses somewhat sizable loans, anywhere from $10,000 up to $200,000 loans, forgivable loans, and grants, each of which are, you know, really designed to touch a certain part of the economy and a certain kind of business problem for the business owner. The best thing about this program, from my perspective, is that it is quick and easy. It's we call it an express package for a reason. And this was part of my business background, and also the feedback I got from listening to people say we want it simpler and easier and streamlined. Once you complete your application and submit it, we're promising people they'll have a check in hand within 30 days, assuming they've been approved.
That's great.
The first check went out in 40 days, I'm embarrassed to say, but as I said to the governor, there was a holiday in there, so we had a few extra days where we had not full workforce. But I think it's going to be extremely helpful to businesses, and it's simple and easy to apply for, and the paperwork is minimal. So the whole idea here is to just do that little bit of stimulus for these companies that are right on the verge, so that they will make that next hire. Because, as you know, the state is while our unemployment rate has been coming down, and we're really thrilled about that, it's down to 8.2% right now, it's still not low enough. And so we're looking for every which way we can find to help make those next job offers, if you will.
Sure. So if you could just briefly walk us through the application process, because a lot of the times small businesses say, you know, I hear about this, but how do I actually do it? You know, what kind of direction can you point me in and help them out? So, you know, for the small business owners that are watching here today, how can we get them involved with what DECD is doing? Okay,
the simplest thing to do is to go to our website. It's DECD.org. It's pretty easy, right? DECD.org. And on that website, it's right up at the front and center of it. It talks about the Express package. And if you click on that button, below that you'll find a description of the program, the one-page application, which you can print off and fill out. It's pretty simple. And there are a few other things we ask people to submit along with it, including, you know, their articles of incorporation if they have them, and their most recent financials. But the whole package should be able to be put together by a business owner very, very quickly and submitted back through DECD.org to our unit or to one of the addresses that you'll see on the applications. And as I said, you know, then we'll have one of our DECD team be in touch with the company. We like to come out and visit the company and see the management, see the facility, and then, as I said, the turnaround time is very quick, and you'll know within a week or two whether you are approved for the loan, and then the check should be issued and in your hands within 30 days. So it's pretty simple.
Excellent. And we all know that small businesses kind of drive our economy, especially here in Connecticut. But, you know, we also have mid-size and larger-size businesses here in the state. What is included in that jobs bill, or perhaps other things that DECD does to try to retain and grow, you know, those medium-size and larger companies that are 50 or more employees?
Sure. You know, it's always been my belief that your best customer is your existing customer. That was certainly true for me in the private sector, and I really believe it to be true here as well, which is that the existing businesses in the state are our best bet for the future. And so our primary emphasis is to make sure we're serving all of those businesses well. The Express package is currently designed for companies of 50 or fewer employees, and it's Express for that reason, right? It should be simple and easy, because those companies, they don't have an accountant on staff necessarily. They don't have 3 lawyers to review the documents. We want to make it simple. But if you're a company that's 51 employees and up, there are other programs that are available through DECD. On the same website, you can still get information about those companies as well. And there are loans available for companies in that range. There are forgivable loans available as well. And for the right set of circumstances, some companies are also eligible for what we call the first 5, which is for very large growth within a single company. And we've seen 4 first 5 companies announced so far. And in those cases, those companies are growing their jobs by 200 or more employees over a 2 or 3 year period. And so we are there to help all size companies. By the way, that program is designed to help in-state companies, but we're also using it to attract companies from outside of the state. And frankly, there are a number of companies that are looking very hard right now at their bottom lines, and particularly the expense component of their P&L statement. And for them, you know, making a move out of a very expensive location like New York to a less expensive location like Connecticut makes sense, and particularly in this economy. So we're actually in the discussion phase with several companies who are considering Connecticut because of that, you know, our opportunity right now to be a low-cost solution for them.
Great, and that kind of leads right into my next question of, you know, what kind of activities are we doing to attract companies from either out of state or international companies that come into the state of Connecticut? Because, you know, time and time again I hear from small businesses that say, you know, Virginia approached us about moving our facility there, or Florida approached us, and unfortunately it has worked in certain instances to get those companies to move to lower cost states. You know, what are some of the things that the state of Connecticut's doing to try to attract businesses to move from other states here to Connecticut? Yeah,
you know, I mean, I have mixed feelings about this, because I don't want those states poaching our companies, and I kind of want a neutral stance with them. But we're also understanding that the competitive world in which we live requires us to be a little bit less than you know, reactive. We have to be much more proactive. So we have in fact been approaching companies that we think fit the skill set of the kind of a talent that we have here and are sort of natural takers. You know, one of the things that we've done in our broader economic development strategy is really look at what clusters of companies are likely to be the growth opportunities for the state in the future. In other words, where do we have the workforce, the cost structure, you know, all of the things are going to add up to be a win-win for the company and for the state. And so we've been targeting certain companies in those clusters, and you can guess what they might be. They are advanced manufacturing, which we're quite good at. And if you want a company that's onshore that has great research and development, Connecticut is a super place to locate. We're already strong in insurance, and so you know, we want to talk to insurance companies. You know, our first of the first 5, Cigna, brought their headquarters back. They're a, you know, strong health insurance company, and they said, we're going to bring our headquarters back to Connecticut. We're going to grow our jobs here. So that's you know, the example of the kind of company we're trying to approach. And then, you know, there's also financial services companies. Again, we have a real strong foothold, particularly in the southwest portion of the state with RBS and UBS and a multitude of VC firms and private equity firms. So those are 3 examples of the kinds of companies we're just saying, you know what, we've got a cluster of them already, and we have the skill set to support those kinds of companies, so let's go after those. Let's talk to them about making Connecticut their home.
Now, do we have in place protections against, say, companies like Cigna that you often hear, okay, they're going to create 300 jobs, but then they're outsourcing 300 more to either another state or to another country? When we make these deals with these larger companies, are we putting in the assurances that if we're going to offer these credits to these businesses, that we actually can make sure that those jobs are created here and that we're retaining most of the other jobs that already exist?
You got it perfectly. So the way we structure our deals is it's not a absolute growth, it is a net number, right? So if a company says they're going to add 200 jobs, say, and then they take 200 jobs and move them out of state, then they're down at 0. They still have no growth on their books. So under those circumstances, we have clawback provisions built into our deals, so that the loan that might have been forgivable is not. They have to repay it, or you know, in some cases it's other sorts of security that we might take that would become the state's property if they don't live up to their half of the bargain. And so far, you know, if you look back over the last 10 years, now I will say there's been a lot less activity in the last 10 years, and we hope to generate in the next 10 years with stimulating some growth. But over the last 10 years, if you add up the number of jobs created, it's 105% of what we targeted in the development deals that we did. So that would say we've done slightly better than what was expected. And I would hope that we would improve upon that ratio. We have a lot of companies right now, like a Cigna, that say at a minimum we're going to put 200 jobs in, but it could be as high as 700 or 800 jobs. So we hope to get that minimum plus, you know, our fair share of that next 600 or 700 jobs above that.
So is each company that participates in the first 5, and then now I understand there's a second 5 and a third 5 coming down the line, are those individual cases kind of developed per company and what they're able to accomplish, or is there a baseline and set protocols for each company to get these funds?
So the legislation that authorized the first 5 requires a minimum of 200 new jobs, and that means new net jobs. But then beyond that, we negotiate the terms of the transaction with each individual company based on what they're planning to do. So for example, ESPN came in and they're building a rather large facility, and so they're spending a lot of money that will help us, you know, grow the economy, create construction jobs. Yeah. And oh, by the way, it's going to pay some sales tax on equipment and materials that they buy to build the building, which will help the state revenue. They're adding to their payroll, which will help the state revenue. So we actually look at each investment. We look at how much money we're offering the company to help them, you know, get through some of the high expense they might have to make the investment and make the decision to move. But we know when we make that investment that if they build those jobs they say they're going to build, that our state revenue, in fact, will more than offset the expenses that we incur as a part of the stimulus, if you will, to bring the company in. So all of these are positive revenue deals for the state, and believe me, we negotiate hard to make sure that the state's interests are fully protected, knowing full well that the benefit here is that we get all those additional jobs into the state.
And one great thing about Connecticut is we have a lot of bright individuals that are full of ideas. And one thing that caught my attention that DECD is now doing is a program, or at least partnering with it, called Startup Connecticut. Yes. I was wondering if you could expand upon, you know, what we're doing to help start up companies here in the state of Connecticut.
So this is one of the most exciting things we're doing, actually, because You know, you mentioned before that small business creates new jobs, and actually it's only about 8% of small businesses that create jobs in the long haul. And those 8% tend to be, you know, brand new ideas that get on a very fast track. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can in the state of Connecticut to create a climate where entrepreneurs feel very comfortable to bring their next idea and their next startup idea. We've been pretty successful at this in the past. If you look at Connecticut Innovations, for example, which is the quasi-governmental organization that I happen to chair, more importantly, it has been our form of making private equity investments into these startup operations. It's actually done more, it's fourth rank in all the states in terms of the number of deals it's done relative to sort of similar peers in other states. But having said that, it's not enough. We're number 8 in terms of the number of patents we produce in states, but we're number 44 in terms of the new business startups in the state. So what we're doing is we're using Startup Connecticut, which is a national organization that we're housing here in the state, as well as using Connecticut Innovations to stimulate even more startup activity. In fact, we'll be issuing a request for a proposal, a request for qualifiers for a proposal to help us build what we're calling an ecosystem for innovation, including hubs for entrepreneurs to work together inside of a common space, mentoring programs, education for entrepreneurs. What we're trying to do is really create scale within the state so that entrepreneurs feel like, oh yeah, this is a great place for me to start my business, and oh, by the way, there's some financial help as well. You know, our entire investment in Bioscience Connecticut, which is a huge new healthcare facility and research facility that will be built at UConn Healthcare Center, and of course the Jackson Labs deal, are all geared towards creating even more of that kind of entrepreneurial startup business here within the state. Now those seeds take a little bit of time to get going, but we're very hopeful that we can accelerate the growth of startup companies here very quickly.
Now, if somebody is interested in perhaps approaching the state about wanting to start up a company, it's available on the website as well?
Absolutely. DEC, you can still use the DECD.org, or you can go directly to ConnecticutInnovations.org, which is also on the website, I mean on its own website, but also can tell people how to access their programs.
And just briefly, just talk about some of the things that we're doing for culture. You mentioned that a lot of the workforce is based around what we have here in the state of Connecticut, which is a tremendous amount of culture, but something that can be built upon as well. What are some of the things that DECD does to help build our culture here in the state of Connecticut? Because a lot of people look past that sometimes.
They absolutely do, and from where I sit, I think the art side of our equation, having vibrant downtowns, having places where people can express themselves is equally important in creating very vibrant communities so that our young people stay here in the state and they don't move to another location right after they finish school. So just one example, we announced last week that we're going to host a competition of sorts between the cities in the state to try to help them find the best ways they can to demonstrate that art in their community is part of their economic drivers. So it's a contest on murals, and we've invited all the municipalities, focusing on our larger ones, to essentially put in a bid to make sure that they are capable of doing a great competition to win a mural. And the whole idea there is each town, then each municipality will partner with an arts organization or with an individual artist, come back with a plan, and the best ones will win and get some funding to make that mural come to life inside of their organization. So inside their town borders. So our principal message is you really do need a vibrant arts community, and this is a great way to put that face on arts, literally that face of art, right into these communities.
Well, that's excellent, because that's something certainly that's overlooked many a times, the impact that having something like that can have on a community and on the businesses around it. I mean, a perfect example of that was just recently with the Taste of Hartford and all the restaurants being involved, and then we see the Connecticut Whale have over 11,000 fans, which is nearly a sellout on just a regular night. It's excellent to see that kind of growth right here in Hartford, but hopefully across the whole state as well.
You got it.
Well, I know that we're wrapping up here on time. Unfortunately, there's many more topics that we'd like to discuss. And before we go, I just want to ask you about your recent trip to Switzerland, Davos, Switzerland, to attend the World Economic Forum with not only Governor Malloy, but also Commissioner Etzi as well. Discuss some of the things that you guys did over there.
Sure. Well, Commissioner Etzi's been going for many years on his own right. He's been invited as an expert in green technologies. This year, the governor was also invited to attend, and they invited him to attend and participate in a number of panels that really looked at U.S. competitiveness. So it was great to hear him talk there, and honestly, he stood out as quite a leader relative to the other states in the way we're approaching balancing the budget, stabilizing the economy, and starting to really focus on growing jobs. But we also had the opportunity to meet with a lot of business leaders from around the globe. To be honest with you, I was very pleasantly surprised by the number of people we talked to who are very interested in Connecticut. We've got some new potential converts to Connecticut, I'd say, after the trip. So we'll be following up with all of them to see if we can't bring some more business to Connecticut. But honestly, it was very stimulating. It was a 24/7 kind of event, and it was great.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and I hope we can have you back sometime to kind of target some of these specific proposals that DECD is doing, like trying to keep young people here in the state of Connecticut, because we all know that that's very, very important for growing our future here in the state. So thank you very much, Commissioner Smith, and appreciate you coming by today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for once again watching Your State with me, State Representative Christopher Davis. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, especially about anything that we covered in this program, feel free to contact me at 860-240-8700. That's 860-240-8700. Or you can contact me directly through email, christopher.davis@housegop.ct.gov. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next month.